the only vegan drink that was available was to go to Cafe Coffee Day and drink vegan shake. Now, alternatives to milk has become common. You can just go to any supermarket and you're able to find. So I would say in the past 15 odd years, there's been a tremendous change for animals, and it's all been for good of animals. Because sadly, animals are not a political force themselves, right? So they have you need to have an agency. Someone like you and me has to take an agency to speak on behalf of an animal, which you don't necessarily. For example, let's take any other issue, right? Labor right, domestic violence, any other issue, LGBTQA plus issues that are there. One big chunk of the people who speak up are the people who are affected themselves, right? That's one chunk, and then you have the supporters who kind of come and speak. In terms of animals, that initial critical mass does not exist. The people who care about it have to speak. Now, broadly, what happens is that there's a constant debate as to who regulates the animal agriculture industry or the animal industry, right? Because typically what happens, as I said earlier, even with S.K. Patil, he was the Minister of Agriculture. Now, for example, the Animal Welfare Board of India is with the Ministry of Animal Husbandry, Dairying and Fisheries. So the question that really comes down is that there is a conflict when you have a mandate to increase production. On the other hand, you have the mandate of improving the welfare of the animal. How do you kind of maintain the balance between the both? And when you are in these drafting stages, and that's the balance that we have to constantly strike, right? As in, on one hand, because one of the things that happens is that we are very much attracted towards banning things. Isko ban kar do, usko ban kar do. Now, I feel that when you ban something, that's the easy way out. If there's a problem, let's ban it. No, then comes the whole issue of enforcing, because then nobody enforces it. So what happens is when you look at it from far, it seems like it's all very good. It's like something like when people say, when you turn on Doordarshan and see Doordarshan, India seems like a perfect place. When you look at far, when you look at Indian law, it seems like India is a perfect place, right? But the problem really is that we've had a very simple solution for everything, which is basically say, let's prohibit, let's ban, let's ban. Whereas what we really need to be understanding is that most people are not inherently cruel. Like nobody wakes up in the morning and says, unless they need some mental health, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "Chalo, aaj let's hurt an animal." Nobody says that. There have been situations where cruelty has become institutionalized because of conflicting interests. And what is important is that collaborating with the industry, be it the poultry industry, be it the animal testing industry, be it any industry that you have, so that it's a win-win situation for the birds, for the consumers, as well as the industry. And I think my experience broadly has been when it comes to regulators, instead of just allowing the industry regulatory capture, is basically the industry controls everything, or activists shouting down ban, ban, ban. What is really important is to find that middle path, as like what Buddha says, right? As we need to find that middle path. And in that middle path is where success lies, because when everybody, because the two things, right? We as animal groups, we love to call for victory. Victory, this happened. Victory, that happened. When we call for victory, what ends up happening is that there is, when you say somebody is a winner, there is a loser, right? That's why there's no, otherwise there's no nothing called victory. But when you claim victory, the person who loses, that person's ego is really hurt. And that particular person is not going to lay down and say, "Chalo, we're going to let do anything." They're going to come out and revolt. And the revolt will end up happening hurting animals. What's important is that animal activists come out of the mindset of calling for victory, but calling for collaboration. Can we collaborate with different people and understand as to, yes, they have a point of view, we have a point of view. Can we find that middle path, right? For example, egg laying hens is a good question. Like there is, the fact is that when you confine these animals in battery cages, the cost of production is pretty low. Now, consumers are not willing to pay a lot more money. We are expecting the food businesses to move away from cages to cage free. We need to find some middle path in which, how are we to support the poultry industry to transition from cage to cage free? How are we to bring awareness amongst the consumers that even if you have to consume an egg, consume one egg lower if you want, but pay that more for cage free eggs, because if you don't pay, the birds pay on your behalf. And just that awareness that needs to be done, be it with relation to institutional consumers or corporate consumers, all of that becomes very important. And I think to go back and answer your questions on drafting legislations and stuff like that, what broadly ends up happening is that balancing act that needs to be done, where you're taking everybody into consensus, and it becomes very difficult to bring in something that's win-win-win. And most importantly, what is actionable and implementable, because you can write up something very good, but if it's not actionable, then it's not worth the paper it's printed on. But you also don't want to write something that is so poor, because once the law is made, as you know, for years, it does not change. So it needs to be forward looking, yet it should not be something that is so complex it will not get implemented. And everybody has to come out as a winner out of that process. So I would say that's, as when you're in a drafting committee, these are all the considerations that's in one's mind when you're making that particular proposal and getting things done.
Your way, like whatever you are mentioning, it's like a fresher. I'm truly saying this, like the points you are giving, these are really, this is helping a lot, and I'm sure the audience is benefiting a lot from the ideas you are giving. So since we are talking about the cage-free institutions and the overall scenario, I'd like to know more about your organization, that is Global Food Partners. So how do you work, and how you think you are benefiting the whole food sector?
Sure. So Global Food Partners was set up with an idea that we need to be helping the poultry industry to transition from cage to cage free. As you might know, there are multiple food businesses around the world, including India, who have made commitments to go cage free. So basically saying by 2025 or whenever, they will basically, depending on what the sector is, some by 2020, 2025, 2027, they will only source cage free eggs. But that's easier said than done. There's a lot of technical ability, that is technical capacity that we need to build. So Global Food Partners is a consulting company that works with both ends of the supply chain. So this could be egg producers as well as egg buyers. What we do is we work with food businesses to help them write a commitment. Then we help them plan out. So we look at different markets, so be it China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, wherever. And then mostly we work in 8 countries in the region in Asia. And we develop a roadmap. And once that roadmap is accepted, then we help implement that roadmap. And that implementation, there is building capacity of the farmer so that they're able to raise, for example, the picture that you see behind me, like cage-free birds. What we also do is we are in the process of setting up a training center and a model farm in Indonesia as well as China. So the farmers are able to see how cage-free birds are raised. And so and we also help companies to then report their progress. So the end-to-end consulting is what Global Food Partners does. We are also a member of something called as an Impact Alliance, which is an alliance of different sustainability organization, which is Global Food Partners for Eggs, Proterra, which does for sugar and soy, the Global Roundtable on Sustainable Beef, as well as the Textile Exchange, which looks at sustainability in fiber, so it could be related to cotton or leather. And we have all come together to set up a market mechanism called impact incentives to help farmers and companies to fulfill. So broadly, what we do is extremely collaborative work with the industry and to successfully transition from cage to cage free and make higher welfare animal farming economically viable.
Good to know, sir. And I'd really like to say you that you are living the dream, I will say, because you as an animal welfare, I will say as an animal welfare activist, your career is also in the animal welfare. So I'm pretty sure, even me, I also want in going forward in future, I also want to build my career in the animal sector. I'm pretty sure that people who are in this sector, they also want to see themselves focus on animal welfare as a career option. So if we see that now if we see in the society, there's a thing that animal welfare, it's more considered as a passion or as a completely social cause. If you're doing animal welfare, it has to be as an NGO or something. But animal welfare can be a sector, like a career option as well. So I'd like you to guide our young people that how one can choose animal welfare as a career option and what are the different options available.
Sure. And I think I agree, Rashmi. I'm very privileged and I have extreme gratitude for my life that I'm living the dream, if that's say. But I would definitely say that it's not just living the dream, but I made the dream happen as well. So, and I think, and I have no special powers, or in the sense like I'm no anywhere special, right? As in, with the great difficulty, passed my second PUC, went to the cheapest and the lowest possible law school in Bangalore, and so it wasn't like I'm a genius or anything. So broadly, what kind of happens is that. The other thing that came is this, right? As in they say that every human being has roughly around 80,000 hours of working life. And how can you do the most good in that 80,000 hours? And I agree, for the longest time, not just for animals, even for NGOs, right? People think that, oh, if you're an NGO worker, then you have to live in poverty, wear one kurta, have a jhola, walk around with Hawaii chappal, door to door. That's the, typical, for people who have seen Anand, the movie, anybody that, that Rajesh Khanna in Anand is basically the way you should be dressed and done. And it was a very funny story that someone told me, and I wish I remember this. So who told me this story? I believe once there was a big gathering of people who wanted to save the environment. And this one leader asked the question saying that, how many of you are willing to starve and go on a hunger strike for the environment and save this forest? And everybody raised their hand. And then he asked, how many of you are willing to sacrifice your one day's earning for the environment? And everybody raised their hands. And how many of you are willing to hug a tree when the bulldozer comes? And everybody raised hands. And then somebody said, how many of you are willing to wear a suit, go into a company, change policies so that we don't lose environment? And then nobody really raised hands, because we kind of think that you need to be an outsider and screaming for the change to happen, but not realizing that companies are also made of human beings, and it's important that you can be there. So the few things, one is immaterial of what stage of career that you are in, there is a way to help animals, but I'm going to start with early career stage. Now, a lot of people think that maybe you should be a veterinarian or a lawyer, and I think that's a misconception that you have. No, you have to be a lawyer to help animals. Not at all. Whatever stage that you are in, you can help animals. Let's start with this. Right? The obvious career options are veterinarians, in the sense that you can be a veterinarian and you can help animals. But you could also be a good accountant and help animals, because a lot of times, a lot of animal welfare organizations don't find good operations people who can ensure that the electricity bill is paid on time, ensure that the water is paid on time, people are paid on time, and you're creating a professional working environment for people. So you can be an operations person. You can also end up being a community builder. So if that's your skill set to build community and do that outreach, you can also be that. You can be a chef and learn to cook plant-based diet and stuff like that. And then you could be a chef and you can help animals. animals. You can be an architect and help design nice shelters and stuff like that and help animals. So literally you can pick any career choice that is there, and then one can help animals in that. The key things to realize is that we can't just keep taking this as a part-time career, in the sense like to say, well, you know what, I can only do this when on a Sunday at between 4 and 6. While that's important, the people who abuse animals are in it full time. So the people who help animals also have to be in full time. But I think what's important and what's really heartening is to see this whole professionalization of the animal protection movement. When I was volunteering in People for Animals many years ago, like now almost 2 decades ago, we every day was going and raising funds, and if you didn't raise funds, you didn't have money for the next day. Now we're seeing professionalization that's happening, and we have good pace coming in. And obviously, an organization such as Humane Society International are like leading the way in terms of that, and also a lot of local organizations. For example, even People for Animals, now they have a fellowship program that they're running to build talent. So immaterial of where you are, I think you can. The way I would start off is by volunteering. So start by volunteering, explore wherever you can before you kind of fix what you are. But most importantly, you have to figure out what is the most good that you can do and in your career. So I would strongly suggest there's this website called as 80,000 Hours, and they have a career guide as well as a one-on-one session that they can do. And I strongly suggest everybody do. There are also other things like the animal advocacy careers. So visiting animal advocacy careers, they have a volunteer board. So volunteering with organizations. So use your early career capital, early career before you have earned your career capital to explore and do things. And then once you get the career capital, you can then settle in to do what you want to do. So again, literally, I challenge anybody to come up with whatever profession, there is a way to help animals, because animal welfare for the longest time, Rashmi, we've thought sits outside of everything. As a matter of fact, animal welfare sits in center. Look at COVID and pandemic, right? This whole pandemic outbreak is a biosecurity issue, which actually started with animals and human interaction, be it with relation to zoonotic diseases, be it with relation to foodborne diseases, anything that you really look at it, or be it with relation to fashion, there is an animal aspect involved in it. So you can be anything in life, and you can think about animals and include them. So you don't necessarily have to work for an NGO. You can be part of a corporate, and then you can do the change. You can work from outside. You can be a professor, you can be a lecturer, you can be a researcher, you can be a physician, you can be anything, and then there is definitely an intersection that you can see as to how you can help animals.
It should be really helpful. Since we are talking about the plant-based sector, and there are innumerable options and career opportunities in the plant-based sector. So, sir, can you, from your viewpoint, what do you think is the future of plant-based sector? That is one part of the question. And second, I'd like you to discuss, like in Assam or maybe in Northeast, the meat demand is quite high. I would say it's on the higher side compared to the other sections of the society, other parts of the country. So what do you think, how we as different NGOs or animal welfare activists, how we can advocate vegan products or plant-based products in this part of the country, and how we can create a demand so that more people become aware, and how we can create the demand, basically. So this are two parts of the question.
Sure. So my long sense on plant-based is that be plant-based meat or cellular agriculture, but mostly plant-based meat, is that it is bound to become mainstream. And in fact, we are seeing major animal agriculture businesses also investing in plant-based. For example, be CP Foods or others who are actually big players coming with it. So obviously there is a huge amount of demand there, and there is need for either food scientists or entrepreneurs. GFI, Good Food Institute, is a good organization to kind of see the work that they do on the plant-based meat overall. Humane Society has a humane entrepreneurship program. So if you're a budding entrepreneur, so you can definitely invest, and you're seeing an increase. Now, the increase really is also because as population increases, and what the two things, right? One is that there's an increase in population. Second is that the wealth of people is broadly increasing, as in COVID is kind of pushing people back to poverty. But broadly, if you were to minus out COVID and see the trajectory of wealth growth in the country as well as the region, it kind of increases. Now, one thing that happens is that once there is an increase in wealth, there is going to be a correlated increase in consumption of animal source protein, right? As in that's something that is very common. Now, and what ends up happening, and so when that increase happens is when there's a whole amount of demand. And Northeast is no different than any other place. It could also be like maybe a tad bit cultural, but I think that's like there is that influence there. So I would say that one is of course awareness. It's just like raising awareness. But most importantly, what people need are tasty, cheap, and convenient alternatives, right? If you can